I have entitled this evening's homily, Vox Populi, Vox Dei. This is a Latin saying that means the voice of the people is the voice of God. You know, a lot of people think that this line is written in the Bible. It is not. Our first reading today is one perfect example of a situation where the voice of a people or the voice of the people is not the voice of God. Here is the background. The ambitious Queen Jezebel had succeeded in influencing her equally ambitious husband, King Ahab, to abuse his power. He turned away from the God of Israel, who had liberated them from slavery and led them to freedom in the promised land. Together, this couple had inflicted upon the Israelite nation what Judaism would call a reign of terror. At some point, the voice of God could not be heard anymore by the people because the king and the queen had ordered the massacre of all the prophets of Israel until wala nang natira kundi si Prophet Elijah. They had all replaced their prophets with the false prophets of Baal, who loved to perform all kinds of gimmickry. They had also succeeded in getting the majority of the people to listen to these false prophets and forsake their covenant with God, the God of Israel, by worshiping instead the tribal idol of the Canaanites, who was called Baal. Well, in spite of this situation, Elijah dared the people to declare freely in public their choice. Pinagboto sila as to which God they intended to follow, the God of Israel or the Canaanite idol Baal. But you know what happened? The people simply remained silent, obviously because takot sila. They were afraid of the consequences of making a stand that would truly reflect their will. Natatakot sila sa hari at reyna. You see, sometimes what you call the voice of the people is not truly the voice of the people. Sometimes what you call the voice of the people might not truly be the voice of the people. It could be a voice that is manipulated by a few voices. And so the prophet Elijah instead dares the false prophets to prove that their idol really listens to their prayers. And these false prophets now build an altar and offer animal sacrifices. And then they start calling on their idol, their god Baal, the whole day. Pero walang sagot. They get into all kinds of rituals and gimmicks. They go dancing and hopping around the altar. And they even cut their skin to induce themselves into a trance. But wala pa ring sagot. The writer says it almost poetically. Sabi niya, there was not a sound. No one answered. And no one was listening. Well, Elijah proved himself to be the true prophet, not by dancing and lacerating himself or getting into all sorts of theatrics, but by listening to the God of Israel in his prayer. And this is what he says in his prayer when his turn comes. Answer me, O Lord, answer me, that these people may know that you, Lord, are God, and that you have brought them back to their senses. Matagal ko nang binabasa to, ngayon ko lang napansin yung last line na ito. It is only now that you have brought them back to their senses. The last line in his prayer is most fascinating. He is praying that God bring the Israelite people back to their senses. Ang bayang nawala sa sarili. Meaning, he's praying that they recover their true voice. He knew that this was not possible unless they opened their minds and their hearts to listen to God through His prophets. The voice of God empowers the people to express their true voice. And sure enough, this is what is going to happen. After the Lord appears again in the form of a fire coming down from heaven, the way God revealed Himself to Moses in a fire, a burning bush. It was the fire of God's Word, ang apoy ng salita ng Diyos, that finally enlightened their minds that had been darkened for too long. Well, ito rin yung sinasabi ni Jesus sa ating gospel reading ngayon. It is only God's Word, down to its smallest letter, that will come like fire and empower the people so that the voice of God can truly become the voice of the people. Baliktad pala dapat. Vox Dei, Vox Populi. Only in this way will they discover their true greatness, and only in this way will they bring about the kingdom of heaven here on earth.